Welcome to Learned or Be Learned, the podcast series where I provide summary, application, and analysis of books and other platforms to help you learn, grow, and become your most productive self. And I interview guests weekly on this show who will share their knowledge, experiences, and expertise to help those of you who are hungry for more. Also, I have a link in the main podcast description if you're interested in wanting to guest speak, provide book suggestions, make critiques to make this show even better. Go check it out. And speaking of making this show better, if you find value in what I do, please subscribe, share, and write me a review. I'm your host, Shiva Danashaker. Thank you for listening. Love you all. Let's jump into episode 1. Alright, so we are in episode 1 of the Learned or Be Learned podcast series. Today's book will be about how spacing out can unlock your most productive and creative self. It is called Bored and Brilliant by Manoush Zomorodi. I chose this book because I thought it would be the perfect quarantine book. And yeah, I get it. Quarantine is definitely a trigger word, so I'll refrain from saying it for the rest of this podcast. But I think this would be the best book for our situation, right? A lot of us have more free time. We don't know what to do. Maybe we're reflecting. Hell, maybe we're just avoiding it altogether. We are going on Facebook more or social media, anything to escape boredom. But this book will show us how embracing boredom might make our 2021 the best year yet. So, what is boredom? And we all know emotions have an evolutionary purpose. There's a benefit to them, being happy, having dopamine, being upset. We're all social creatures by evolutionary standards. So having emotions is definitely beneficial. But what is the evolutionary purpose of boredom? It just really seems pointless. And I thought this too, right? So, but hang with me so imagine a world where we all just got excited about everything, right? So you're at the grocery store and you're like, yeah, potatoes and carrots, yeah, let's do it. It's like we're all the fucking Kool-Aid man busting through the damn wall like, oh yeah, about everything. That sounds just as awful. Honestly, life is all yin and yang, right? There's no light without darkness, no happiness without sadness, and there's no excitement without boredom. But just because the opposite spectrum doesn't seem as, intuitively necessary or important or even something we would want, at least in this case with boredom, I think it's definitely, it's the way you perceive how boredom is, right? A lot of us try to avoid it, making everything about having this one-sided heavy life of excitement and numbing with social media. But there is an evolutionary purpose. So the book talks about how there was 2 groups of 25 individuals who performed creative tasks, and they were asked to come up with as many different uses for these 2 red Solo cups in 2 minutes. And as you could predict in the book, the experimental group, who was to do meaningless tasks for 20 minutes and get kind of bored doing them, had way better creative ideas for the cups. And all they did was copy numbers out of a phone book. And interestingly enough, they repeated the same thing, the same experiment, but they had 2 experimental groups. One was copying, or I guess the control group in this instance would now be copying the number of phone books, or numbers from the phone book, and the experimental group was reading them aloud speaking them aloud, because reading is passive and speaking is definitely active. So they're testing it again to see maybe if reading and speaking is different. And speaking definitely, I'd say, has less boredom intuitively. And when you're reading, we all know this, our minds tend to wander sometimes. We're thinking other thoughts. Reading is definitely passive. So what they found is the same thing, which was really interesting. And there's many other classic examples of people trying to figure out boredom. It went all the way back to Freud. For those of you who know Freud, he's a classic psychologist who had some very crazy ideas about how the mind works. right? So for example, he said that daydreamers were neurotic. He warned teachers that daydreaming students were at risk for mental health issues. I'm just so glad I wasn't a student in school when Freud was a psychologist, because they may have locked me up, because I am a huge daydreamer. And there's nothing wrong with daydreaming as long as you act on your goals and ambitions, but I swear, if I was there, you'd be like, this dude's got some serious problems. We need to get him out of here. But yeah, but on the other side of that, right? So you can't just let your mind wander all the time, or you wouldn't get shit done. So basically, by design, daydreaming is helpful to us when we're stuck on a problem, whether it's personal, professional, or otherwise. And boredom is one of the best catalysts to kickstart this process. For example, Steve Jobs, the founder and former CEO of Apple, did this. Bill Gates takes 1 to 2 weeks every year to just think. He rents a cabin or some isolated location and does nothing but lets his mind wander. He takes one big task. So let's say he wants to become more productive. He'll focus on that task. So he'll get as many books as he can on productivity. He would just, read all these books, think, go on walks, no phone, no music, no internet, just him and his mind. And he does these think weeks. That's what he calls them. And if one of the richest men in the world does this and it helps him, it just makes me think maybe there's something to it, not just because rich people or extremely successful people do something doesn't necessarily mean it's cut out for you or for anyone, but it's worth a shot. At least that's what starts to get me to wonder, right? So, we delegate technology, but we delegate technology to do more of the work, and our brain has to do less. And honestly, that's essentially devolving our brains to work as hard, while computers are more of like the second storage unit for us. And just like any other muscle in your body, when you work out, your brain needs to have a workout as well. And who knows, 100 years, people can't even do multiplication anymore. People are already doing less and less of it, as we have calculators so readily available. Just as we snap our fingers, we can have a calculator there. We can tell Siri or Alexa to do some calculation, and it's crazy. So to get to the point, right? So there's 7 challenges in this book that I'd like you to try. And I'm going to go over half the book and half these challenges in this episode, and then the other half in the next episode. So this episode's going to be more about disconnecting, and the next episode will be like how to let your mind wander. So stay tuned for that if you're interested. Okay, so challenge 1, digital usage. So take a good hard look at your usage and screen time. How long do you spend? You think you spend 30, an hour, right? So we tend to underestimate oftentimes, right? So how many calories did you eat? Oh, I don't know, 1,800, but you probably ate like 2,500. How long do you spend on your phone? Oh, a couple hours. Maybe you spend like 6 hours. So take a really good look. Look at your patterns. Look at your weekly average. Just look at your screen time. And if you don't have I'm not entirely sure about Androids. If you don't have an iPhone that tells you your screen time, there are definitely apps that can help you otherwise. But yeah, take a good look at it. Just maybe use your phone for a week. Just use it regular. See how much you use it, how much you pick it up. You become more conscious of it. And I get it. It gets harder to get away from screens nowadays. There's fridges and cars have bigger and bigger screens. And the book threw up the statistic saying that the average American picks up their phone 150 times a day. 150. And that's the craziest thing, right? If you ask most people, they're going to say, no, I don't do that. But if you asked 80% of people, would say they don't do that. But by definition, average is at least 50%. So that means people unknowingly do it this much. And that's the problem. if we knew how much we're using our phones and we're deliberately using it, right? If you are a social media influencer, are you promoting your business? Are you promoting your artwork, your music? Like, that makes sense. And yes, you can also enjoy social media, but to excessively pick it up every time you're bored, every time you're in the subway, every time you're waiting in line, you never let your mind wander. There's this thing called the iPhone effect, where apparently they found in this study that the presence of a phone just laying there was enough to reduce empathy between two individuals having a conversation. Honestly, give those you care about your undivided attention. I know you're like, but Shiv, I'm a good multitasker. No, you're not. Just put down the phone. 10, 20, 30, give them your undivided attention and enjoy their company. Because at the end of the day, who cares if you saw an extra TikTok thing or a meme? You can just go through that later. I like to keep a certain time when I do these at the end of the day when I'm already unwinding my brain. So I'll just like go on social media binge mostly at the end of the day. And it helps me that way, right? So you're not just using it whenever you want. And that's basically what challenge. So challenge 1 is basically to turn off your non-vital notifications, badges, etc. It's not going to kill you. Honestly, it'll give you a peace of mind. I only have messages and phone call notifications on. I hate badges because I hate the little red dots. They really annoy me. I have been doing this for the last year and a half. And I have to say, I feel at more ease with my phone. I don't look at it as much. And this was a year and a half ago, I was already starting to feel anxious about how many notifications I constantly got. And today we have even more social media. We have TikTok. We have all these things that people use. And I feel like it's just going to bombard you even more. Oh, I also have calendar on because of events. I need to be reminded of such. But I turn on vital notifications for the sake of communication. Exactly what the phone is meant to do, right? So the phone is a technology that we're meant to use. It's not meant to use us. And moving on to challenge 2, unless you are having a life or death emergency or you work in the ER or something really, really stressful and urgent and you have to have your phone, you should put it away. You should put it in a bag when you walk, not in your pocket. There was a world before instant messaging was a thing. And those people waited. They waited for replies, and so can you. It's not the end of the world if you don't answer a text right away. I mean, hell, honestly, I know so many people that read the text, and I know they read the text, but they don't respond. So, it's fine. You can wait. And we think of these moments as unproductive, inefficient, if we're not checking our emails constantly or checking our tasks. But it's actually counterintuitive, and we need to let our minds wander. So keep your phone out of view and not listen to your headphones either when you're in transit or driving or taking a bus or walking down the street, and just make it completely tech-free. Make it a completely tech-free time, unless you're listening to, this show. I give you permission. But yeah, jokes aside, you don't have to do all of these, right? So I don't do all of them. I find when your mind is most creative and wanders freely and pick that time to not do it, right? So I enjoy listening to music when I work out because it kind of gives me that motivation, and I enjoy podcasts when I drive, but I feel like I'm most creative when I'm biking, so I don't listen to anything when I bike. I sometimes put on noise canceling headphones just to like tune out others, but also sometimes just that background noise can also be very helpful to observe scenery and whatnot. So just pick one time really works for you and try it out. Try it out. Let me know what you guys think. So there was this interesting statistic in the book, right? So it said in 2014, people uploaded an average of 1.8 billion digital images every single day, up from 500 million the year prior. So it went from 500 million to 1.8
billion photos a day.
That is a total of 657 billion photos. That is insane. We use our phones too much. And that kind of is what challenge 3 is in the book. It's about photo free day. Go one day without taking any pictures and just enjoy the moment you're in. And I know we take pictures so we can enjoy that moment later and just like reminisce with it. But, not just studies, but, science shows we remember events better when we really immerse ourselves in it with our senses, right? Our sight, our smell, our touch, our hearing. When we are immersed in that moment, we're going to better remember it than that 2-second snapshot we took or sent it to our Snapchat friends and etc. Going on with challenge 4, and the last challenge for this episode will be to delete the app. No, Shiv, no, please, I knew this was coming. Yeah, I don't know what you were expecting. This is a book about technology reduction, not elimination, because I think technology would be, I think technology is very helpful for us. But there are times when we need to let ourselves just go, just disconnect, remove ourselves from this hyper aware, bombarding world of stimuli. And I do get it. We live in that world where we're just always connected, bombarded, and never bored. But like I said, it's about this yin and yang, right? We need some boredom if you're going to want to tackle some creative issues. And although I can't tell you specifically what your boredom will do for you, it's one of those things where you just kind of have to try it out, do these things, try it out. And like I said, it's different for every person. So it's basically like maybe you're having a tough professional issue. You don't know if you should switch the job, but you don't really think about it because you don't have time to think about it, or you're too busy to think about it. Or you just avoid it because it's scary. So it gives you that time for your mind to wander. And when I say wander, you don't have to constantly think about the problem either. Sometimes the world's most creative solutions arose when the mind was most relaxed. And I don't necessarily mean meditation either. Like Isaac Newton discovered gravity when the apple fell on his head. But there's also like artists who get inspirations from their dreams. So it's when the brain is most relaxed. It's not when you're stressed or your body's all just tensed up and you can't really think. It's honestly, the body is just a crazy mechanism. Those stories we've all heard where someone fell out of a plane, no parachute, survived the fall. Like, how'd they do that? Well, and oftentimes when you actually hear these stories, you'll hear about how they passed out or how they were unconscious. And this alone was the reason why they survived, because their body was completely relaxed. When your body's tensed up, you tend to take more damage. Same thing with car accidents, right? So if you passed out before the collision, you would survive and get minimal to no injuries more oftentimes than not, obviously depending on the situation. There was another story about how a kid survived, I think it was like 45 minutes in a frozen lake, and and he was underwater. He was underwater for 45 minutes and he survived in frozen water. Like, that's insane. And the reason was because he passed out from hypoxia. He passed out from, I don't think it was hypoxia, but he passed out and he survived. The reason we can't hold our breath for like 2 hours, it is not because there's not enough oxygen. It's because there's too much CO2. So the body knows how to actually convert that and sustain it. So that kid lived. So what I'm saying is the body is incredible, but you have to be relaxed and let it wander. So just think about it, right? Technology is a tool. Is technology serving you? Is it hurting you? Do you control the technology, or does it feel like the technology is always pulling you back and controlling you? Yeah, I get it. It's cliche, but seriously, The smartphone is like a child, always grabbing your attention, killing your sleep. You shouldn't otherwise drop it or it's going to be broken. But like what I mean is we treat it so preciously. But there's only two industries that the customers in two industries, they call them users. That is drugs and social media. Think about that. Because they both have one thing in common: addiction, and the pure goal is to keep them on it, keep them hooked. So delete that one app. What app takes the most amount of your time, huh? Is it Candy Crush, Clash of Clans, Facebook, Instagram? Try it. I'm not saying you have to get rid of it. I think we just have to learn how to be disciplined with it, how to live life with technology, not for technology. And alternatively, you could always set an application timer on your phone and lock the app after a certain amount of time. I try to cap my Instagram at 15-20 minutes. And I use it at the end of the day. I mostly like scrolling through like inspirational things, and occasionally memes, which I think they can be kind of funny sometimes, especially with the election one about Nevada. I think that one is hilarious. Or, we all, because I do 15 minutes because we all have that moment, I'm talking about when you're stalking someone, cough, cough, Dwayne Johnson, or you're endlessly looking at memes and things like that, right? Or you're going through controversial posts and looking at the comments and seeing all the bullshit barking people go through back and forth. It's just not productive. It's not the use of your time. And it's so counterintuitive for me to say, be bored. That's more productive with your time. But it is, right? So you might have the greatest business idea. You might have the greatest song inspiration alone. You might have the most creative artistic work that you want to pursue, or you might truly understand if you're in medical school or you're going to be a doctor. Maybe you're trying to think about what exactly do I want? What kind of doctor do I want to be? What kind of lawyer do I want to be? These things will come to you if you focus on one problem at a time and just let your mind wander. And when it's truly at its most relaxed state, you will reap the benefits. Most definitely. So try these challenges and let me know what you guys think in the review section. It would mean the world to me if you could rate this and share it. I just want to share this information. I know not everybody loves to read, but everyone likes to listen and watch things. And, if you got some value, just give me a review. I'd love it. I'd love to hear your thoughts, good or bad, how to improve. You can check out my site in the podcast description. That would totally help me out. And I just want to say thank you, friends, and I hope you enjoyed my first episode of Learn or Be Learned, Education for the Hungry.